Oh, it's so funny. I've been in the space for so long, and it actually came up in a conversation with a client last night. I'm again building another social network for a client. And he said to me, I remember 20 years ago when you had that social network. He said, was that before MySpace? I was like, I think it was. So I literally have been in the game for 20 years. I have started actually, you and I pre-show were talking a little bit about tech. So I'm an ex-IBMer, just so you know.
Right.
And I started with IBM. Around the time of 9/11, actually, I had previously had an idea for an online community because to get myself through grad school, I actually sold websites. This was like so in the beginning of the internet. And anyway, so I had this idea for a social network. And then when 9/11 happened, we had layoffs at IBM. So I took my retirement, my I don't even know what you call it, my savings at that point. I started a social network at that point in sports and entertainment. We could talk about that. So I've been in social networking for a very, very long time. I'm a brand creative type of person, and I see, digital marketing as a tool to execute and build businesses. So, I'm a pioneer, I guess you would say, and I've been in it for a long time. I've seen it change so much.
And being blunt, what's your preferred channel for your social media?
So another good question. So just I'll give you a quick. So I have a company, and the company has multiple brands underneath it. So for my consulting work, which includes like my keynote speaking, my training, my consulting work, that really my focus there is LinkedIn. I've written a few books on LinkedIn, primarily how individuals and companies can utilize LinkedIn in a human way to build relationships and drive social selling. So I do spend a lot of time there. But some of my other brands, like the little warrior woman you see behind you, I have a podcast, an event series, and a conference, and that's all supporting women in business. And so we do a lot on Facebook, because we're doing live events all the time. So, as a social media strategist and advisor, really, it really depends on what your goals are and what your brand is all about. So I always start with the brand, but if you ask me personally, the Jasmine Sandler brand, most people know me on LinkedIn, as kind of number one.
Right, perfect. So, I guess that's the starting point for anyone, is to pick the right channel, or the right social media channel for themselves. And is it as simple as,
no,
are you business or consumer?
No, it's a loaded question. Because I wish it was just so simple. Social media actually is something that has become a real business, a real job, as opposed to what it used to be looked at when I started out in it. So, you first have to really understand what your business goals are, and then understand who your audience is. And then you have to have a plan that suits that, at all touch points of the buying cycle. So you have to know what type of people you're going to influence and reach in each different channel, and also have someone, whether it's yourself or you're working with a consultant or an agency, optimizing, measuring that all the time. I mean, you have to be social media is it's become just as important as other marketing activities these days. So it's more of a, measure and optimize, and then make decisions on different channels, because the last thing that you want to do is, spend all your time in a channel and it doesn't work, or conversely, try to spread yourself or your brand too thin across multiple channels, and then you really won't get anything done, and you won't actually be able to measure effectiveness either.
Yeah, so I want to come back to data in a minute or two. I also want to come back to the overwhelm piece, the fact there is so much to do, potentially to do. And there's one of the things I've always struggled with personally in social media is that, I kind of get LinkedIn. When I look at Facebook, I'm just not a user, but I also know it's super powerful for my businesses. So how does anyone get started in their journey, even if it's a channel they don't use currently?
Yeah, so how somebody gets started, just for any channel that they're not really aware of, is to first kind of understand it. Like Instagram, I'll just take Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I did a recent training for a real estate company in New York. And I love when I do a training and then I see these companies take action. It's exciting. They really didn't understand the purpose of it in terms of the importance of it to actually drive business. Because I'm a bottom line person, you know, I do business consulting. So, you know, in the training that I did for them, and what I generally recommend is, if you're thinking about a channel, you know, first get yourself comfortable with the functionalities, you know. As I think I said to you pre-show, social selling is about just as much about having a business plan for your brand as it is understanding the tool, right? So, you know, that's kind of number one, understand the functionalities, and then, you know, take some time to understand who the audiences are and what can be done. So for example, you said Facebook.
Yeah.
So with Facebook, I mean, there's millions of groups. I'm just going to start there, right? So, and I'll give you the example of my Warrior Women in Business brand, because it's a brand I spend probably 40% of my business time on for a very specific business reason. So there are millions of groups on Facebook where female entrepreneurs are looking to get advice. They're looking to be part of communities. They're looking to obviously showcase or sell their products and services.
Yep.
So, you know, it makes sense for them to get involved in communities that have like-minded women, you know, and understand how those communities work, which is another key point everyone needs to understand.
Yeah.
That it isn't just about selling. It's actually about understanding that community. What are like the ticks of that community? Who are the
that specific community. So every community's got their own behaviors, rules, written or unwritten.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you for saying that. So each community, like I run a lot of groups for Warrior Women in Business, for example. So each community, each group has its own rules, you know. So it's important that when you join a community, a group, whether it's Meetup, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, that you understand what the rules are, what the activity level is, right? And is the audience that you want to reach? It doesn't need to be a direct sale audience. Most business comes in, and you probably know this as well because we've both been in business for a while, through relationships and peer influence. So that means a lot of these groups and communities that you want to join should be ones where there's others in there that can feed you business. So as an example, so I get a lot of my business in two different areas. So one is from other agencies, you know, because they can't do a lot of the things that I do and my agency does, and vice versa. Yeah. So we support each other. And it makes sense that we know what projects each other is on, and we know which services we're announcing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other piece would be like in professional services, for example, looking at your client and identifying who serves that client, right? So again, for example, I generally work on the individual consulting side with, you know, executives that are launching new businesses, and they need a lot of things. So they generally need a COO, they need financial counsel, they need legal counsel. So I want to be in those professional services groups and communities to drive visibility of what I'm doing to peers that can drive business to me. So that's very important for anybody starting out and trying to understand where they should be sitting and spending their time online.
So groups, you think, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, you think groups are a key starting point?
Yeah, I think, that's step B. Step A is having a brand, you know. But even if the brand is, like, I've done a gazillion LinkedIn profiles, even the brand is just your LinkedIn profile as a personal brand. If it's developed in the right way, based on a business goal and based on who you are as a person and what you're going to commit to, then step B is then introducing that brand to those groups or communities.
Okay, interesting. So again, a few things we could go down the route there, because I think people like you who've got, you know, several hats you could wear, maybe get very confused as to which one they put forward, and, you know, what's their kind of their public face and what's their kind of Scooby-Doo face when they rip off the mask, what they really do. So it's always I find personally, I don't really know how to position myself when I'm trying to do 3 or 4 things, which to outsiders don't seem very connected, but to me they seem completely connected. So in terms of like getting started, brand first, choose your channel, then understand where people collectively gather together on your channel.
Yep. So getting started, so basically the way that I work and the way that, I take my clients through a whole process to get to somewhere, so then they can go free and build their business, or I'm alongside them, whatever, very flexible. It's starting at number one, strategy, your personal brand building. So to comment on what you just said, if there's something important to you as a person and you're building a personal brand, and you find that it's easy for you to bridge that interest, knowledge, or hobby, or whatever it is, in client conversations, I always recommend that my clients bring that into their conversations. I actually think it's very important because you are a human brand, so it's building the brand on both a professional and a personal level. So that's number one. And that has everything to do with how you're going to communicate, who you're going to communicate with, what your style of communication is. I am a speaker. I like speaking, but I'm also a writer. So I have to figure out how much time I'm spending between speaking and writing. Some of my clients love writing. They could sit all day and write, and they're prolific writers and they're very good, where other clients are just verbal and they only want to be out there. So you have to be true to yourself when it comes to building your brand. You really, really have to, because people will sniff a disconnect very easily when it comes to personal branding. So anyway, so once you build the brand, even if it's just, like I said, a start, to use your word, a LinkedIn profile, or maybe a Facebook branded page, an Instagram business profile, whatever it is, then it's about identifying where you're going to spend that time in that channel, right? And then it's having a content plan, which we haven't touched at all. So, the content, so I do a few things, right? So I produce content, and then I curate content, and then I share other content related to my events, right? And other events. So you have to have a content plan that suits what you do. And it's not really difficult to think about it, because I always have my clients start with, like, what is your expertise? What are you going to hang your hat on? And what lights you up as well,
Yeah.
That's really important. So, and then it's about managing the brand and the channels, which isn't simple. It's, again, to go back to what I was saying before, it's work, it's a job, so that's why a lot of my clients start with LinkedIn, because it's easy to go with one and work that out, and especially if they're professional services, it's going to make sense.
So several things there. First of all, the human element, I think it's, the way I talk to people, I mean, again, I would never say I was a social media expert in the slightest, but, I understand it. But the way I see it is that you're just being yourself. It's like going to a business meeting or having lunch with someone, you're not pretending to be something you're not. I mean, you are what you are. So, like, you have to kind of, maybe you want to refine your speaking skills or refine your writing skills, but, it's a very human channel. All you're doing really is reflecting who you are as a human. That's the way I try and explain to people. And if you're not sincere, it doesn't come across well, or if you're trying to be. But anyway, the point, people appreciate humanity even more so in times like these.
Of course.
Yeah. And that's why the use of video just takes it, the explosion of video is kind of an amazing and fast, overnight development for all of us. But the human element is absolutely key to this, and that's how you're going to relate to people, and that's how they're going to relate to you, and that's online or offline. That's how business gets done.
Yeah.
So the third part, what you talked about, content creation. I think that's the bit that probably is a lot of people's next stumbling block before they realize, again, you have to do the work for it. But in terms of content creation, what's your kind of trick for getting people over that mental block about what they have to do?
Oh, well, that's pretty easy, because I always start them with one piece. Whether it's a group training or it's an individual client, we always start with one piece, because I don't want anybody to start creating content and going down the wrong path. It's just, it's a rabbit hole, and you'll end up wasting a lot of time. So,
give me an example of what you mean by that. What would be a wrong path?
Oh, very easy. So a wrong path would be choosing. So one thing we didn't talk about is I've been in search marketing equally as long. Right. So anyway, so the point is when I look at a content plan, I look at it from both a search perspective as well as a social media perspective.
Yep.
So going down.
Search, just to be clear, you mean search, Google search, SEO,
Right.
Yahoo,
This
Bing.
could
Yeah,
take us 10,000 hours to have a webinar on,
yeah,
but just
yeah,
in general,
yeah.
the practice of search marketing, right? Whether it's organic being found under the organic listings or it's paid search for the paid listings. We're not going to talk about search so much. So I just want to make a point here. Search marketing, right, as a practice is really, it's a business practice that's very important because it helps you uncover where you need to focus as a business or an individual personal brand from a topic level. And so from that piece, if you don't do that exercise up front, you could end up writing and creating content about something that's a disconnect from from your business goals, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and the work that I've done in search, I could tell you like 1.5 billion case studies, but at the end of the day with search, my best clients have understood what their business position is versus their competitors to be able to understand to target a search, or just make it simple, a keyword plan. And then from there, they can base what content they want to create,
Yep.
around a specific topic. That is hugely important. And that's only literally point one of this answer. So the topic, right? You don't want to go down a topic that isn't a complete connect to what your business delivers. Let's just make it simple. Look
Yep.
at your product, look at your service, and understand, just it's a very simple tip. Like, what are the questions people ask you around your product and service? You know what I mean? Like when you have a conversation, you say, I sell social media strategy or whatever. Okay, what does that mean? And then think about, write down all the questions that people ask and what you answer. From there, you're going to find some gold nuggets of content that you can create.
Yep.
And then the second piece of that, in terms of not going down the rabbit hole, is your brand. Okay, so I told you I have a company, JS Media. We do strategy, we do events, right? We do a conference, we have a podcast, right? So each brand has its own character, its own design, its own look and feel. So you as a brand don't want to start designing and then redesigning every time you put out a piece of content. I can tell you, I have people that work for me. It's a lot of work. So that's why I'm a stickler for doing brand strategy upfront before you do any content. Because then you can say, okay, these are the colors of my brand. This is the topic I want to go for. I want to create content where I'm speaking into a camera, or maybe I want to create content where I'm writing blog content every week, or maybe my content is just going to be about curating others' content and providing my opinions. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, again, that's a huge topic we could go down as well. But again, in terms of the discipline to actually create that content on a regular basis, again, that's the bit I personally have always, I kind of do it when I need to do it. I do it when I'm in the mood for it, but not in a kind of structured daily, weekly, whatever the right way is. So how do you get people into kind of the framework of creating regular content?
Pretty simple. Like I said, I try to get them just to produce, like once they go through the work that I do, I'll get them just hey, can you commit to one piece of content a week? And that doesn't mean something simple. It's usually, because I usually work with executives. So it's usually, okay, let's say a LinkedIn long form article done. Okay, 800 words, and it's going to be part of a series. And then out of that, we'll pull different pieces of content from just that one article and create videos out of it, create graphics out of it, or they can, like these executives are working for huge companies, so they'll have resources. But if it's an individual, it's still kind of, okay, let's get one thing done. So they're not overwhelmed. And I find that people, in general, if they want to do something and they see it's going to drive the needle in their business, they'll do it,
Right. Well, it's interesting because we've got a course we're just almost finished developing called, it's all about leakage and leverage. It's all about, well, the leakage part is the data you're missing out on capturing, which is going to be of value to you, but also leverage. If you're doing, as you say, if you're doing your LinkedIn post, how do you take that one bit of content and leverage it like crazy so that it's, you're not, you're basically taking advantage of doing something once and you're making sure you get the full value from it, whether it's every channel. So it's, It's
So important.
yeah. So and people, I don't think people are aware that it's doable. It's the right thing to do. The logistics of doing it as well aren't impossible, but again, it does take time.
Oh,
Um,
it definitely takes time. And also it needs to be done right.
yeah,
I have clients that will just say, hey, can you write the taglines for us? I mean, they know that it has to be done correctly. So it's important. I mean, whether you even just have somebody proofread something, it just has to be done right. So.
so then again, the last bit I wanted to focus, was two things I wanted to focus on. Uh, One was around, well, how do you actually manage the resources? So you've got the idea, you've created the content, either they use an agency like you or the internally, but how do you actually make sure you're getting everything done, you find someone to do the work, and you're happy with the outcomes?
Yep. So like I said, that's why you need a content calendar.
Right.
It's like everybody these days should think, I've been saying this forever. Think of yourself as a publisher because you kind of are.
Yeah.
So a publisher has a content calendar. They have an editorial process. So that's one side of life in this work is to have that and, stick to a schedule. So, I mean, even for Warrior Women in Business, I keep bringing it up because I spend a lot of time, more of my time now creating content for Warrior Women in Business. It's just really important right now. So the brand, but anyway, is to have one newsletter a week. That's it. And I know when it's going to go out and I know what it's going to look like, which is really important.
Yeah.
And also I get feedback. I really want to know, do people love it? Do they hate it? What pieces in the newsletter do they like more than others? So I'm constantly analyzing content. So on the one hand, it's about having a schedule and deciding based on your resources or lack of resources, what can you do, right? I literally will spend 3 to 4 hours on one newsletter. People think I'm crazy. I'm like, no, I want it to be perfect,
Yeah.
because I see it as it's a reflection of me. So that's super important. And then it's about, listen, all the social networks, every tool that's out there has analytics these days. That's so the easy part of life is to be able to, you put content out, you're gonna be, if you know how to check the analytics from, running Facebook Live, which we do every week, to a newsletter, no matter what system you're on, inbound marketing, everything has analytics.
Yeah.
So make it a practice to look at your analytics because that's how you'll be able to make better business. Such as, a simple example would be the difference between organic and paid posts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Facebook, believe me, they want to keep making billions of dollars. So they're going to keep saying to you, you should sponsor this post. You should, but should you sponsor that post? I'm always telling my clients, no, let's look at what our business plan is. Your content plan should suit your business plan. So if your business plan, for example, like my clients, I get them paid speaking engagements. So if they want to get out there and be paid for a speaking engagement, and our content plan says, well, that means you need to be on a podcast, you need to be on a webinar, you need to be writing about your subject of expertise in month A. And then some little shiny object comes along and says to them, oh, you should write about this content. No, you need to stop yourself and not do that. So I actually think I actually know personally, it's equally as important to not produce content that's going to distract from your content plan.
Right.
Strangely enough, it's actually really important.
It's right, yeah. And I also the comment about we're all publishers nowadays. I think people don't recognize that we are publishers. That's the most. I mean, we've got an audience potentially out there, but it is the publishing mindset. It's your personal newspaper, whatever it is, your channel. Yeah. So analytics we could talk for completely hours. I think the awareness piece. Just be aware that there is so many analytics out there. To pick the key ones to focus on. And again, I think it's worthy of another whole conversation around analytics at some stage. But so the other thing I see most is this kind of massive disconnect between, someone like you putting your own brand out there, you're the face of your organization. But then when you get to, the likes of, or something like IBM, I guess, you're something faced with this, obviously an organization full of real people, but the corporate face stops the individual's personalities from shining through and the real strong stories just from bubbling up. So I find that big organizations not able to kind of let go, and they spend months, analyzing what marketing's put out, when actually there's some great human stories out there within their teams or their clients that they could be publishing every minute of the day.
Yeah,
But that kind of corporate kind of structure
of course.
prevents kind of a very human element from getting out. So how do you help organizations get across that?
Well, I usually start with one executive. That's where I start because that's the person that needs to be the role model for the
Right.
other folks. So generally, I do this training I've been doing for a long time. I found a video of me doing an interview in Chicago like 10 years ago. It's like, oh my God, you can't believe how long you've been doing this stuff. But anyway, the point is that, so I do this training for executives on social selling strategy for executives. The
Yeah.
reason why I do it is for them to get somebody in their organization to raise their hand and be the spokesperson. That's honestly, that's how it starts in any of the companies that have been my clients. That's where it starts. And they basically are a guinea pig, you know, and it's working with them. A lot of them go off. It's pretty cool to see what they do because some of them will go off and end up like running a whole podcast series under their name, supporting their company.
Yeah.
Some of them will be, I've seen like with my Roche Diagnostics client, I've worked a lot with their executives. And so, it started with working with one executive and then he saw the work and he saw the influence that his social brand was having internally, which was
Right.
really cool for me and for him. And then from that, other executives started to say, hey, you know what can we do? And so that's kind of number one, because there's definitely a resistance because obviously they have stricter guidelines.
Yeah.
That's why many times I've done work where to me, it's like simple, so like talking to the HR people, because it generally starts with them. They're writing the guidelines, they're working with the executives, and there's this, it's not so simple as just knocking on an executive team's door. It's like, it's a big organizational decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of like, there is a lot of buy-in that needs to happen internally. So I've had companies call me that I can think of one company right now that I've been talking to for 5 years and they still haven't pulled the trigger. It's okay. I mean, it's up to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they have 14 CEOs. They're a multinational company in the beauty and health space. And anyways, they just can't get anybody on, they can't get the teams on board. So it generally takes that. And then like the last engagement I can think of was with a global fintech client that I had, where what happened was they had, which is generally the case, where they said, okay, we're gonna do a week in New York. They're a global company. We're gonna bring our executives in and we're gonna do a week all on digital marketing, right? And we're gonna have different trainers come in, whatever. So that's usually where it starts, because they have some type of program where they want to leverage, like you were saying, the power of the executives to build out the visibility and the human capital of their brand. So that's how it starts. They usually have that, and then I'll train them, and then one person, it's weird, it's usually one person, even out of like 25, who will get really excited and say, hey, I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Right.
I'm like, let's go, let's do something, So that's how it works.
Excellent. So, like, I guess, like most things, it needs sponsorship, it needs buy-in, and it needs someone to stick their hand up and say, "Well, I'll run with it," and then it flows from there. So fantastic. What's your primary form of communication? How do people reach out to you? And
So,
also, when's your weekly Facebook Live?
okay. So JasmineSandler.com, that's my consulting and speaking website. It's every single way to get in touch with me is on there. So my Facebook Live. So I'll just tell you just about the brand. So JasmineSandler.com is my website for speaking consulting. It's my oldest website. And so that's really just about, it's more like companies and, senior level executives that want my help. And then I have a courses digital marketing academy that is for individuals that want to DIY digital marketing. So I have courses there. And so those are on the JS side. And then under Warrior Women in Business, Warrior Women in Business it's more than just a podcast. So it's an event series, and I also underneath that run a conference called Brand You. So it's a really cool conference. It's really intended to help entrepreneurs and executives turning entrepreneurs, help them to not just like build their brand, but I bring in like 14 other speakers, so it's a whole day of business development for them. And so with Warrior Women in Business, every week, sometimes it's 2 weeks, you can check the schedule depending on the urgency of the topic. Like right now, as you can see behind me, I just had a podcast like yesterday, that's why this is still up. But yes, I did a panel with New York City Mayor's office on, unfortunately, what's going on with domestic violence and COVID. So I do panels, and they are all about like helping women in businesses as well as helping women in the home. So on the Warrior Women in Business Facebook page are the list of all the upcoming podcasts and events that we have.